Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When it comes to the whole budget discussion, I'm going to just briefly give an answer to Chairman's comments. Running $2 trillion deficits, the Trump tax cuts, which, by the way, were getting close to paying for themselves pre-COVID, that is chump change, $150 billion per year. So that is only 7.5% of our current deficits. Carbon tax, that's something that I'm not sure how you'd model that in terms of what it would do, but until we get our spending in line with historical revenue generation, which is always average 17.5 to 18% of our GDP, other than 3 years in the Clinton administration, we just don't have an economy that will give us more revenue. And if you do tax it more, you will have lower economic growth over time. That's another consideration philosophically in terms of what you do with budget. My question to all three of you would be, the fact that you've got the now second largest economy and the soon to become third largest economy, India, which is about ready to eclipse Japan's economy, when they're plowing forward, Senator Johnson talked about some of it, what's happening elsewhere. How do you justify, from your own points of view, when that is a reality, and you can actually put some numbers down there, and where the savings in terms of what you do by mitigating climate has got a little more speculation to it? Give me the pros and cons from each point of view of how we navigate through all that. And if you want to throw it in the context that we're borrowing nearly 30 cents on every dollar we spend here, which is a budget consideration, if you want to spend money, how do we justify doing that? We'll start over there, Doctor, on the left.
Thank you, Senator. First, I want to commend you for the framing of the problem. You did say that there's no more disparate views. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic. I hear equal concern for the welfare of Americans, whether or not it's health or whether or not it's economic. And so I'm going to try and sell you a little bit on why I'm for a carbon tax. A carbon tax is less intrusive. It'll spur innovation. It'll protect the economic interests of Americans. It's a simpler approach. I think it's a market-friendly approach. That's why I'm for it. So the way that I can—
How much roughly a year would you say that's going to generate?
It certainly depends on the tax, but you're right. It's probably in the order of 100 to 200 billion, something like. And then,
again, we're talking just
if I could
five.
interrupt for the record. My carbon pricing bill was priced out at about $2 trillion over 10 years.
Okay,
revenue.
That would be then.
Yeah.
That would be then.
That would
roughly,
align with Mr.
Yeah,
Garrett's
10% of our current deficit. So that means it's a lot of room to go from that and say changing tax policy. Still, we're spending a lot of money that we can't generate through tax policy.
Sure.
Go ahead.
And my point is it helps, and also
Yes.
the reducing the fossil fuel subsidies, although not massive, even smaller, help.
But the heaviest lifting would have to be done through spending if you want to get to a
or
balanced
taxes.
budget.
Yep, that's right. So, I guess I'm trying to be a little bit more optimistic that there's a policy out there that kind of joins the two sides and their concerns on both the economic and health consequences of our energy use. On China, I commend you also. It's an issue. It's a global pollutant. Now, we heard today about the local pollutant effects. Those are real. Those have nothing to do with China in the sense that, addressing fossil fuel use here would help the health of Americans in that sense. But on the global sense, you're right. We have China, we have India. It's a global problem. Again, I think I come from a bit of optimism on my policy here. One, we don't doubt that this is a serious problem, so we can't just say because we can't solve the global issues, we can ignore it. I certainly think if we don't have smart policy that addresses the issue domestically, other countries are less likely to act. But indeed, reciprocity should be part of it, which is, again, the border adjustment tax helps with that. And again, I'll get to what I said before. I think a price signal will lead to innovations. I think it will give you the tech breakthroughs that you said are necessary. I think that's where the answer lies. And quite honestly, as we've seen in other sectors, if Americans have tech breakthroughs, the Chinese will adopt that technology. And so I think there's real hope there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for the thoughtful question. I am not an economist, so I'll just briefly say that the studies that I have cited are not about modeling the future. They're not amorphous. They're about kids who already have cancer. have birth defects, have asthma. And so addressing fossil fuel now will have very real impacts to communities today. And that energy justice is an incredibly important issue. We all deserve access to reliable and affordable energy, but just not at the expense of fence-line communities.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. I would say no, in order to help the deficit, we could repeal the $570 billion of green tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act without repealing the whole act, thereby leaving the black lung program provision as it is. I'm against a carbon tax because it's regressive. It hurts poor people the most. Their prices go up for appliances, for food, for other kinds of things. The border adjustment, according to the World Trade Organization, might not be completely legal, so we might have foreign products coming in at lower costs than American products. An additional tax would slow GDP growth in the United States. These taxes are never perfect, and it's always difficult to estimate the amount of carbon in a particular product, and so you might find some exemptions, some not. Most importantly, this is very similar to a value-added tax, which we have seen rise over time. They start small. Europe has a 20 to 25% value-added tax that started very small. Canada's was rising also. And Congress, you senators, are unlikely to repeal the income tax or any other tax. So this would be one tax layered on top of another tax. America's air has been getting steadily cleaner. The 6 criteria pollutants, if you look at the EPA data, it's getting cleaner all the time because of our use of clean natural gas. If we offshore production to China, they are making these electric batteries, the wind turbines, the solar panels with coal-fired power plants. It's not reducing global emissions or helping climate change. What we need to do is use our own oil and natural gas resources and encourage other countries to use clean natural gas also, either by us exporting it or by us exporting the technology so that they can do fracking also. That would be far more useful than these $570 billion in green tax credits, many of which, by the way, are going to be benefiting China. EVs now, apparently, they don't have to be made in the United States to get the credit if they are leased, because they count as commercial vehicles, which opens a loophole to, again, subsidizing China, making China stronger and the United States weaker. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your comments. And one final conclusion in terms of a comment from me. We're entering into a much broader discussion. It's right in front of us now with the what's happening over in the House in terms of debt limit and all of that. I come from the world of being an entrepreneur with an emphasis on finance, and I can tell you that you can't run any enterprise like we're currently running it. And since the Gulf Wars to date, we've been taking our country and its balance sheet into a place that, regardless of what you want to do here, it's not healthy. The crowding out effect of interest in and of itself is going to be a heavy weight that gets worse each year. And all I can tell the American public, whoever's listening, the numbers always win. You can't escape them. And currently, we're in a place where we've got time, but it takes political will and discipline, just like you'd have to exercise in any other venue to kind of rein things back in so that this place is healthy for all the people that look to it for whatever reason it might be. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.